Let's get reaction now. North Country State Senator Dan Stec is with us. Welcome back. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Tom. Good to see you.
What did you think of the speech and the proposals that the governor laid out?
I think that her presentation yesterday was one of the least controversial or, more cautious presentations that I've seen. There were no really big sweeping proposals in there. We'll get more detail next week when we get the budget presentation. That's where you start hanging actual meat on the bone and getting specific. With that said, she said that the number one issue facing our time, her words were, the issue of our times is affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is important, and it's something that we've been struggling with, certainly in my district, but around the state and frankly, the country for several years now. I'm not sure that most of us, myself included, would characterize it as the issue of our times. It really jumps off the page that she would use that language and hardly mention at all the problem of illegal immigration and our migrant crisis. Now, specific to that, she seemed to focus a lot on what did she want to do for New York City on the housing front. But she also wants to make investments, put money into subsidizing housing. And I really think that that's ignoring dealing with symptoms, but they're not the root cause. The root cause of why we have a housing affordability problem is we've got an affordability problem in New York State. We are one of the highest tax states, one of the most regulated states. It is expensive to build residential housing in New York State. To talk about a few of the positives, I talk to educators all the time, and they've all been very concerned, especially since COVID, about the problem of our literacy rates and our performance evaluations from the testing that we have, that we aren't doing well in reading in particular. And I've been working with them and sharing that information with state ed and the second floor. And I was very encouraged. One of the issues that I've been highlighting to the governor's office made it into her state of the state, which is that she wants to focus on literacy and in particular shifting the way that we are teaching kids reading. Clearly, the numbers reflect that we've got an issue with our reading levels. And so I was encouraged by what she had to say there. I and a lot of my colleagues on the Republican side, and I think this will have a lot of bipartisan support, we were encouraged to hear her want to talk about mental health services, particularly pediatric mental health services in schools. That's something that I think will pay dividends. That's a great investment in our young people. It's a great investment for public safety and society. And there's just so many good things that come from addressing mental health issues, particularly in our young people. So, and that was something that she did focus on in her speech. So again, like all these state of the states, there's good stuff in there that is easy to support, that we should be doing. She tap danced around crime, and she almost made no mention of out-migration or the illegal immigration housing crisis that we have.
She did suggest looking at former prisons as possible sites for affordable housing. That's something you have suggested as well. Is that a possible solution, finding new uses for the closed prisons here in the Adirondacks?
Yes, we absolutely need to do something. And again, I'm not sure that there's enough abandoned or unused state properties, prisons, and otherwise around the state to move the needle on affordable housing. Again, she talked about that, and she talked about subsidizing housing. But then she, in her own words, she was saying this is just scratching the surface. But every little bit helps, and more importantly, you've got the public owns real estate that the state of New York has a stewardship responsibility to, that are falling apart. They're becoming blights on communities. And if they can be repurposed for anything, including housing, then I think that would be a wise course to do, rather than just let them sit there and rot. Let's put them to use, whether it's Camp Gabriel's or Mariah Shock or any other number of ones in the North Country. Why not try to repurpose them? There'll be an expense to that. It's not like you just say, all right, we're going to do this. There will be an investment that we need to make to bring them up to code and to, make them habitable. Certainly enough time has passed in Camp Gabriel's where reusing those structures is going to be a real challenge. But there's a real opportunity with Mariah Shock that is a great structure. It's only been unused for about a year. They've kept the heat on. They're trying to upkeep it so that it doesn't slide into disrepair. That's something that I would support doing. Again, we got to get from the governor mentioning it in a speech to getting it into legislation and getting it done.
There was very little mention in the governor's speech about the multi-billion-dollar deficit this fiscal year. Best estimate right now about $4.5 billion. You'll have to wait to hear more about that in her budget address next week.
In fact, I don't think she threw out any specific numbers at all about the budget deficit in her speech. And in fact, thinking about it now, I'm not sure she mentioned it at all, other than just saying, we don't have an endless supply of resources, which of course has always been the case. So again, that is a signal to me that she's very cautious about how she's going to address this subject with the Democrat majorities in the Senate and the Assembly. They want to continue to spend money. They want to increase spending. And the solution of many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle is that the answer to this is to tax the rich. I mean, and which is a very lazy and unintelligent response to running state government, to just tax the rich, especially when you can point to the last 3 years, we have led the nation in outmigration. And it isn't the poor that are leaving New York State. It's the people that can afford to leave. The wallet is what's driving a lot of our outmigration, because we tax and spend too much in the state. But my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are in denial when it comes to the financial issues that we have.
What are your biggest priorities as the new session gets underway? You sent out a list a few days ago. Topping that list, expanded cell phone service in the Adirondack Park, still filling those gaps in the Adirondacks and rural parts of New York. This is still a major priority for you?
Absolutely. I mean, certainly the big picture is we have a $232 billion state budget, larger than Texas and Florida combined. I mean, that is the number one issue, are some of these statewide issues that we've already talked about. But for me specifically, when I start thinking about other issues that are more relevant just to the district, I mean, obviously everyone cares about crime in the district. Everyone cares about affordability and taxes and, where the state's going. But as far as like what's specific to the Adirondacks and the North Country that I want to continue to push on, the cellular and broadband technology and the access to that is important. It's gotten better. I'm not trying to belittle our efforts or the progress that's been made, but it's not where it needs to be yet. And the point that I've been trying to make, and I know it's the truth, and I get agreement on both sides of the aisle when I talk to members of the administration, people all over that have a say in these issues, is that the cellular is a public safety necessity. This is up there now with electricity, running water, road infrastructure, that this is something that's not only important for convenience, not only important for economic development, but it is a public safety necessity. The vast majority of people own cell phones. The vast majority of people now don't own a landline anymore. So they're migrating towards cellular only. And the vast majority of 911 calls originate on a cell phone. So, it is a public safety imperative. And there are things that we can do within the Adirondacks, as far as regulatory things that we should look at and fix that won't cost any money. But furthermore, beyond that, we need to look at, I think, a public-private partnership for cellular, similar to what we did for broadband. On the list that I sent out, affordable housing is on my list. So again, it's a significant issue. I think that there's statewide factors in play here, not just relevant to the Adirondacks, but the Adirondacks, it's an added challenge because we are a resort community. We do get a large influx of people that are coming here using vacation rental, VRBO, or certainly second homes, and that's just changed the dynamic on our housing market and driving our costs up. So that's certainly something to look at. We got a lot of corrections facilities in the North Country. For the corrections officers and civilian staff that work in these places in my district, I'm concerned for their safety. And the changes that we've made, particularly the HALT bill, it incentivizes bad behavior. It certainly does nothing to protect or make our facilities safer. The statistics all back that up. And I carry the bill in the Senate to repeal the HALT bill.
With the state's new Climate Change Act, many deadlines will be approaching in the coming years. Schools are supposed to start buying only electric buses starting in 2027. Very few, if any, districts have started that conversion from diesel to electric. Electric buses much more costly, as you well know. You and other state senators are calling on the state to subsidize more of that cost, or even cover the full cost of electric buses for school districts.
We've all collectively been hearing the same message from our school administrators, and we wrote a letter. And the letter did suggest one of two things. And unfortunately, I think it's been read in a way that I wouldn't have written the letter. But I did sign the letter, so I'll own it. But I'm not suggesting, or my goal here isn't to get the state to subsidize. I just got done. I spent the last 15 minutes talking to you about how the state's broke. But obviously the point there is, if this is such a great idea that my colleagues in state government on the other side of the aisle and the governor believe that we need to mandate this and have all these buses converted to electric only by 2027, then they should pay for it. Because I think if they were on the hook for paying for it, they'd rethink my preferred approach, which would be to eliminate the mandate. And I'm not saying that there's not more that we should be doing to protect our environment, but the point is that 40,000 school buses in the state, and they're triple the cost of a regular diesel bus. You're looking at a $20 billion mandate. So my point is I think your educators, the people that are running the schools, they believe in the suggestion that they want to clean, or they would like to do electric buses, but they're also responsible. Their job is they're responsible for the dollars and cents and making their budget work at the school. And so when school leaders are saying, we can't afford this, or they're talking to the national grids of the world and saying, hey, we're going to convert 20 school buses over to electric. What do we need to do that? And National Grid says, you don't have enough electricity coming to your campus to do this. You're going to need a substation. You're going to need to build, pole barns, because you can't have these things outside. And, you need to, in addition to the added cost of the buses, you have to invest in infrastructure on your campus. The realities here are that the state does not have the electric infrastructure to do this at our schools. The 4-year phase-in period here is not feasible. Start smaller, start in the urban areas where maybe these buses make more sense to be electric. But in the North Country, long bus runs in cold winters, that's the last place that should be forced to get electric buses.